Good morning. Basa tayo ng ating libro guys. Kapag ako Pilipino, magbasa tayo ng ating sariling history book, History of the Filipino People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Today is 01 April 2023. History of the Filipino People, Part 6, The Third Republic, Topic number 29, The Cultural and Social Scene. Nandito na tayo sa paragraph. The language situation. Basa. The language situation. The Philippines has been both fortunate and unfortunate in having been conquered by foreign powers. The almost 4 centuries of foreign domination, 400 years ba naman ikaw anuhin guys, oh? 4 centuries is 400 years yan. Okay, the almost 4 centuries of foreign domination have made many Filipinos polyglots. Through the acquisition of Spanish and English-educated Filipinos have come into contact with the cultural and scientific works of the most advanced countries of the world. As a consequence, they have imbibed the Western cultural tradition. But on the other hand, the acquisition of this Western cultural orientation has resulted in the submergence of those ASEAN values which are the basis of a national culture and evolution. Thus, many Filipino, while learned in foreign languages and literatures, are grossly ignorant of their own. Some, like Doña Victorina of Rizal's no limitang take pride in knowing more Spanish or English than their native language. Yung book yata to ni Dr. Rizal's na no limitang here guys. Okay, ulit. Some, like Doña Victorina of Rizal's Noli, take pride in knowing more Spanish or English than their native language. While such confession does not necessarily mean that they are less Filipino than the rest of the people, it is nevertheless an indication that in acquiring knowledge of other languages and culture, they also lost their capacity for understanding their own heritage. Thus, the average Filipino is confused and spiritually uprooted from his native habitat. The situation has been intimated is the upshot of foreign conquest. First, a small number of Filipinos learned Spanish and became the social and cultural elite, while the priors contributed much to the preservation of the Philippine languages. The Filipino elite, who had acquired a slavish mentality, never cared to follow up the priors, led and maintained instead an attitude of superiority over those who spoke their own languages. Thus, some Filipino families use Spanish in their homes and brought up their children in ignorance of their own. Such attitude was copied by a segment of the lower class who, possessing more imagination than wisdom, proceeded to evolve a kind of Spanish chabacano, vulgarized Spanish liberally sprinkled with vulgarized native words and phrases. Second, with the coming of the Americans, the Filipinos learned another foreign language. Spanish continued at first to dominate the circle of high society, but in the 1930s, it gave way to English. At the same time, the Philippine languages continued to be used in the homes, while Tagalog, the language of the capital and the provinces around it, successfully held its own against English and Spanish. The young generation became the purveyors of English and made it the medium of communication among themselves. With the inauguration of the Commonwealth, Tagalog began to assume a national role. It is now taught in the schools and since 1946 has been one of the official languages of the country. Rightly or wrongly, the purveyors of English blamed the teaching of Tagalog as a primary factor in the deterioration of English in the Philippines. The language situation in which Filipino children are taught a language foreign to their daily lives and community experience has persisted to this day. It presents a problem in the schools where, aside from Tagalog, the students learn English and their native languages. The confusion was worse compounded when Spanish was made compulsory in universities and colleges. The result of such a babel of languages is half-baked knowledge of all but their own regional languages. The hostility with which Tagalog has been met by many Filipinos of Western cultural orientation is based on the ground that it is not yet developed. The argument is vicious, for no language can be developed if it is not given a chance to be used nationally. Language is something that is evolved. It does not spring from the head of Athena complete and fully developed. If Tagalog, as the basis of the national language, has not developed as its devoted exponents devoutly wish it to be, it is because influential Filipinos themselves, owing either to colonial mentality or to regional prejudices, are opposed to having a national language of their own and prepared to fool themselves into believing that they are masters of a foreign one whose nuances they do not even understand. Self-deception is the worst tragedy of the Filipinos as a people. Maalala ko yung magsalita kami ng Tagalog noon. It means galing ka na ng Manila. Yung sa province namin dati, maliit pa kami. Siyempre pag galing ka ng Manila, masasambit mo na yung salitang Tagalog, magtatagalog ka na. So, siyempre, from Visayan dialect, tapos magtatagalog ka. So, parang iba sa pandinig. Pero more on Visayan language ako. Ay, dialect ako. Kasi yung ibang Tagalog, di ko rin maintindihan. Filipino na ako niyan. Pero, hindi natin makabisado lahat ng salitang Tagalog. Kasi guys, ang Pilipinas is islands yan. So, syempre, bawat islands, iba yung dialect. So, kung nasa Manila ka, syempre, Tagalog ang salita mo. Pero, kung saan ka sanay sa dialect mo, mahahaluan mo talaga ng, for example, ako, Bisaya. So, Bisaya ang mahahalo sa salita ko. Di ba? Ganun lang siya. So, dito na tayo sa paragraph, the Filipino language. The Filipino language, the bitter controversy that arose from the national language issue led the authorities of the Department of Education to propose a solution by using Filipino instead of Tagalog as the national language. The reason is based not on any scientific explanation but on purely practical ground, namely to neutralize the bull-headed opposition of the professional anti-Tagalog by not mentioning the word Tagalog, which to the oppositionist is marks of superiority. So Tagalog is now being used only as a basis, but is not the national language. Although to all appearances, Filipino or the national language is patently Tagalog. So as not to arouse the suspicion of the non-Tagalogs, some writers in Filipino tries to dilute the language not with words from other Philippine languages, although theoretically this should be done, but from English. Sentences are liberally and indiscriminately sprinkled with English words and phrases, thus making the alleged Filipino language Taglish, Tagalog, and English, or Ingalog, English, and Tagalog. Such expressions as dito sa aming area ay very good ang tubo ng mga plants. Yan pong mga vendor sa streets ay pinagbabawalan ng mga authorities na huwag mag-distribute ng mga propaganda leaflets. Love na love ni Juana kay Pete, who is jobless, etc. are becoming common not among the common people but among the college students. It is to be observed that the combination of Filipino and English is actually the result not of any desire to make Filipino universal, but of the ignorance of the speakers, for it is obvious that the English words have equivalents in Filipino, but because many speakers, especially those whose education was limited to English, are ignorant of Filipino, they forced English words and phrases into Filipino sentences on the ground that they are merely developing a language which the masses understand. Actually, the masses do not understand the bastard language that is now being used by radio and television announcers and commentators. One notes that practically all radio and television announcers impose their ignorance of the language on the listeners and viewers. Thus, announcers say groceria for grocery. Supportahan for support and many others. From this one concludes that the announcers think in English translate or think they translate the terms into Spanish and then Filipinize them. Thus, groceria is what the announcers think is the Spanish translation of the English grocery, when the fact is that this word is not groceria in Spanish but almacén de comestibles. Groceria is Spanish means grossness. On the other hand, soportahan is supposed to be the Filipinized form of the Spanish soportar, but the English support in the sense of backing up, say a candidate, a movement, and the like of backing. Say a candidate, a movement, and the like is not soportar in Spanish but apoyo. The meaning of supporter is to carry or is another fellow's burden. These announcers and their few sympathizers mistakenly believe that they are using the language of the people when actually they are inventing a language the people do not understand. But then supporters of this kind of bastard language will say that imbecility is one of the sources of the enrichment of languages. On this, there can be no disagreement. Bukas na itong Tagalog literature, guys. For April 02, 2023. Bye everyone. God bless.